Well, thank you so much for your time today
No.
for an interview. Yeah, and like just on behalf of Lions TV and WTSR, we're so grateful for all your support over the years.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. It's great to see how far it's come, and my hope is that we've committed to continuing with the Student Media Council uh, in the fall, and so my hope is that that will continue to develop and grow, and become a very powerful force on campus.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember like I started working with the Multimedia Council, so I definitely like
nice.
to keep that continuing. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I'm eager to see it go forward.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess just to get started, so you've been with TCNJ since 2017, and you came
Mhm.
from Villanova University,
Mhm.
and where you were the chair of the communications department. So
Yes.
how is the communications department, just the School of Arts and Communication, how has it been at TCNJ? Like, what are some big projects you'd like to discuss?
So when I came here to TCNJ, one of the things I wanted to do and one of the mandates was to integrate elements of the school because the School of Arts and Communication, in some ways, was an amalgamation of different departments from different parts of TCNJ. So a big part of what my mandate was to integrate these different departments into a cohesive whole. So it's something I worked on very hard, and we did that through a couple of projects. One of them was really looking at the curriculum overall and trying to figure out some things like, so what are the core competencies that we are saying that when students leave the School of Arts and Communication at TCNJ, what are these core competencies? What are these things that they will be able to do? Right? Will they be able to write and speak well? Will they be able to think in particular ways? So we came up with 8 core competencies that we've been using to guide our curricula and to guide other aspects of what we're doing in the departments that will help us ensure that as a whole we're preparing students in integrated ways. The other thing that we ended up doing was really trying to figure out how we could provide a unifying center that allowed us to pull together all elements of what we did in the school. And so we've been able to do that through what was previously called Makerspace and what we're now calling, we don't know what we're calling it yet, but it's something at Innovation Lab or something like that. We're moving it to the first floor of the AIM building. It will open in the fall. And it's going to be a space where all the departments can come together, contribute, and allow students and faculty to work on projects together that will be really exciting and that will allow for um, really creative collaboration across a number of different projects. And it's something we find very exciting. And the third and final piece among many is the digital platform. We developed Artscom Digital as an idea that in the pandemic, we needed a place for students who are in our performing arts programs and our arts programs to be able to showcase their talents and their work. And since the audience couldn't come to us, we went to them. And so we created what we call our own version of Netflix. And we had this and still have this platform where departments across the school can contribute, and it gives us a chance to show overall what we do in the school. So these combinations, including pulling all the students in the performing arts together in a theater council, putting students in the media, student media programs together in a student media council. These were all designed to have people across different parts of the school talk to each other, interact with each other, collaborate, and therefore have a much more integrated school. Because every conversation I've had with people outside TCNJ who are in professional fields tells me this is where the fields are going. People are working across different platforms, they're collaborating with each other. People who are not necessarily liking what they do career wise are working with each other. So that's how we have to prepare students. So that's what we've tried to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like, that's a fantastic application of like actual skills and like professional development and just
Mhm.
like, that collaboration in general. Did you notice when you first came to TCNJ that a lot of the departments and majors in the School of Arts and Communication were a bit more divided? And also, just what was collaboration with other schools at TCNJ like?
So it's not so much that they were divided, it's that they, I think the faculty had always been interested in collaboration, but they needed the structures in place to help them do that. So what I try to do is to provide the encouragement and the wherewithal, the structures and the support for that collaboration to happen. And often it was through the form of conversations. Often it was that I would have formal sometimes, but just informal conversations with faculty, with staff, brainstorming. And in these conversations, they were dedicated just to throwing out ideas, right? And to I remember in my early days, I'd have long conversations with people where a lot of what we were doing was just people talking and throwing out ideas about their different fields and where the fields are going and what are some of this. And as people talked, you would hear people say, wow, yeah, you do, I do that too in my field. In fact, we should talk to each other. We should have a conversation, right? So sometimes it's just in bringing people together to have conversation across lines of difference that it happened. It was very important for me as dean not to get in the way of the faculty. The faculty own the curriculum. So it was important for me not to try to dictate to the faculty what they should do, but rather to provide the opportunity for conversations to happen so that the faculty could then decide what they wanted to do. And I saw my job as supporting what the faculty wanted and was trying to do. And so I try to really, in that sense, stay out of the faculty's way. I mean, sometimes I had to be involved because people brought me in, and with finite resources, you have to make a decision. Will you go path A versus path B? And that's where I came in. Sometimes I came in and said, okay, this is the choice we should make because these are all the reasons why. But for the most part, I try to stay out of the faculty's way because it is more exciting, it is more creative, it's more productive, and it's more sustainable when the faculty are driving what the ideas are and what that will mean for the curriculum. Because again, the faculty are in charge of the curriculum.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a unique position to be in, to oversee and just to guide the entire big picture of it. Was
Yeah,
there?
and for some of these areas, I'm not expert in all the areas the faculty are area. So why would I try to dictate to people? I'm not an expert in art history. So why would I try to tell people who are art historians the way to to do what they do in art history?
Mhm,
I thought my job was simply to hear what it is that they thought was important, and
mhm.
then as best as I could to try to facilitate what they were trying to do.
Within that position, what helped you understand like areas like of like academics that you didn't know? So it's like you said, you don't know art history. So what helped you manage that in a way?
A lot of it was having really detailed conversations with faculty in those areas,
Mhm,
hearing them speak about them, and then often they would give me stuff to read, whether it was an article or a resource, or they would connect me to some element online, and the conversation between the interaction between the conversations I had with faculty and the resources they sent me was very helpful in my own learning. But I think where I learned the most was coming to either a student performance or a student exhibition, because then I'd see the end result. So when I came to a graphic design exhibition or I came to a visual arts exhibition, which for me, these were the most exciting times of being here. And I walked around and I talked to students and said, so what are you doing? What was your vision? How did you go about doing that? That's what helped me understand what was being done when I saw the end result. When I sat in on a music performance and heard the history of how that piece came to be, what it connected to, what they were trying to do, and why they chose that piece. That for me was the piece that helped it all make sense. So for me, the most compelling, the most exciting part of the job, and the part that ripped the guts out last year, was getting to go to exhibitions and performances, right? I was like a kid in a candy store. We couldn't do that last year, and that was truly, truly, truly difficult. Because for me, that's how I learn. That's how I learn what it looked like. That's how I learn what the field was moving to, that's when I learned how what the end result was.
Mhm.
So that was crucial.
Would you say that's what you will miss most about TCNJ in general too?
Absolutely. It was amazing to walk around and meet students because I wasn't teaching them on a regular basis. I'd often meet them in events like this.
Mhm.
And I'd meet students who came up with these really creative works or these really creative inventions. And to just talk to them, to see how their brains work, to see what drove them to do it, and how much attention to detail, how much time they put together in pulling these things. That to me is the thing that is priceless. I remember meeting one young woman who, in her exhibition, managed to put together um, physical representations of how women heard some of the things that men said pertaining to rape culture.
Oh wow.
So she had in the exhibition hall, in a physical form, that yeah, either through her experience or the experience of friends, things that men said
Mhm.
who were implicated in some kind of sexual assault situation.
Oh wow.
It blew me away.
Mhm.
It blew me away because, as the father of a daughter, I was, first of all, seeing it through new eyes, but I was also hearing things that I would never have been exposed to, or it wouldn't have had the same impact if someone were just talking to me versus actually seeing it, seeing the words.
Mhm.
And I that was really impactful for me because it sort of brought a very abstract concept of physical life in an exhibition space.
Mhm.
And it was amazing.
Mhm.
Another piece that sticks with me is a student, I think, from IMM who figured out a way to connect the 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 music you were listening to colors that reflected the mood the music suggested. So as you listen to the music, the lights in the performance space would change to reflect the mood of the music, which meant that you were part of a totally immersive experience.
Mhm.
Not just what you heard, but also what you saw. Incredible. And he did a demonstration of what this looked like. And I'm sitting there going, who thinks of that? Number one. And number two, how did then you get it to get it to work? Right? I
Mhm.
love that because that I would it was being introduced to another part of the students I met that was impressive, admirable, and added such rich and depth to who I understood them to be. So I love that. I will miss it. I will miss AIM After Dark,
Mhm.
right? We throw the AIM building open and you come in and there's music, there's food, there's exhibitions, there are people's projects being done. Phenomenal, phenomenal. I loved it. I loved it, and truly enjoyed being a part of that.
Wow. Yeah. So, since you've now accepted a position as a provost at Bennington College in Bennington, Vermont, what has being the dean of the arts comm department here taught you for your next position?
That's a good question. I think I have learned because Bennington is very much an arts focused liberal arts school. So one of the things I think I bring from this job is an understanding of how the arts prepares students for different facets of life after college. And that is something that I will take with me, I think, to Bennington. It is also true that I think I've learned more about myself as a manager, as a leader, and what works and what doesn't work. Faculty, um, especially tenured senior faculty, are you have no the only tool you have to work with faculty is persuasion. You can't fire faculty who are tenured. You can't there are no sanctions that you have. So the tool that you have is persuasion and building consensus. And sometimes you're trying to build consensus between people who feel very strongly, very passionately on direct opposite sides of the fence. And so you have to figure out how people who look at the same thing and come to completely opposite conclusions, how do you then get them to work together or at least come to a meeting of the minds? So that for me has been one of the biggest learning pieces here is figuring out how to hear what people are saying, how to hear what it is they're trying to do or what it is that they want, and then trying to figure out how to help them get to a place where um, they could achieve it and where we could build consensus around what we were trying to achieve.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask about that because like in this position as provost, it's more of like a general academic setting rather than arts and communication focus, but it definitely seems like Bennington College is like has an liberal arts focus.
It is a very, very artsy school, which is part of why I love it. So their strengths are music, theater, dance, writing. That's their bread and butter. The people who come there are very arts focused.
Nice.
Um, and it's an exciting place for that reason. It's very creative, very experimental. It's a very small school. It's
Mhm.
800 students, about the size of the School of Arts and Communication, right? And it's intentionally so because they have a very individually focused program. So every student gets to design their own program. There are no majors, there are no departments. Every student gets to design their own program with the help of the faculty, and that guides you for the 4 years.
Oh wow.
So there is a lot of creative energy there because people come, they design what they want, and then they pick from all the classes. They turn over by about 50% every semester. Like the faculty don't offer the same class every semester because the students keep needing new stuff. So it's a very dynamic, very creative place that is very, very innovative.
Yeah. Sounds
And people have used the word nimble to describe the culture of the place. People are always seeking to ask, we have an idea, let's figure out how to do it. And I like that.
yeah.
That gives you a lot of creative energy.
Yeah.
So, that's exciting.
Yeah. So is the curriculum always changing, like new classes to
Up,
develop and everything?
up.
Wow.
By about 50% every semester, the curriculum changes,
Oh my goodness.
which,
Wow.
which is significant. So,
Yeah.
that's a lot to keep up with and that's a lot to be aware of, but it means that the faculty, of course, have to be very dynamic and always learning and
Mhm.
always are able to present new things. They have a teacher practitioner model, which means that the faculty are active practitioners of their craft,
Mm.
and then they bring that active practice into the classroom. So you're learning from people. There's this really unfortunate aphorism that said those who can do and those who can't teach. And that's not true to begin with, but at Bennington, those who teach also do.
Mhm.
And that combination is a very exciting one for students. And they're pretty accomplished people.
Nice.
The faculty are pretty accomplished people, much like the faculty here at TCNJ.
Mhm.
So it's exciting too. Plus, I'll be in Vermont, as I've said to many people, a Jamaican in Vermont. What could go wrong?
Definitely like a much different landscape, even like compared
Oh, yes.
to
Yeah, as everyone tells me, it's much colder, it's much snowier,
Mhm.
it's much more overcast more regularly. So I'm like, okay, all right, well then, I'm gonna have to figure out how to make that work.
Did you
So
visit Vermont a couple times and just like
I
see?
have been I have been there a few times, and it's a beautiful state. I'd never been there before. It's just gorgeous. It's especially in the spring and summer. It is green. It's beautiful. I gather in the winter it's very white because of the snow. So that'll take a little bit of getting used to.
Mhm.
It's much further upstate, so I won't I am certainly thinking about that. I'm going to have to stock up on winter clothes. But it's beautiful. The thing that strikes me about there, though, and this was interesting to me, as I moved around the state, people were extraordinarily friendly. Like people would start conversations with me in a way that people would never do in New Jersey or New York. People like total strangers walked up to me and started conversations, asking me about where my, they could see my license plate. So they say, "Oh, where in New Jersey are you from?" And that's it wasn't. At first I thought it was just one or two people. It was everywhere I went that people would start conversations. Like, well, this is interesting. I'm not used to strangers starting conversation with me. I have to admit I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was great traveling around. It was a beautiful state, but it also feels like a very friendly place, welcoming place. So we'll see.
Yeah. It definitely will be an exciting transition, I'm sure.
Yes, yes. I've lived in different parts of the United States, so this is interesting. I've lived in the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast. I've lived in the Midwest, and now I'm going to New England. So I'm getting the total American experience. I have to say I wasn't born in the United States. So I am coming here to get sort of like, you know, next I'll probably be in California, who knows. But the North, the New England will certainly be a different experience, I'm sure.
Yeah. Are there any specific projects or like challenges that you're already thinking about for to start in your role at Bennington?
One of the things I know they're trying to do there is they're trying to figure out um, how to um, how to keep the dynamism of the academic program going um, in a way that is sustainable for the faculty and that incorporates new and interesting ideas. So I know that's something that we'll be looking at. We'll be looking at the president there is also relatively new. So she also has a very exciting agenda that she's coming in with. She thinks Berman, which I agree with her, Bennington is a great place for experimentation and for trying new things. And she herself has a phenomenal background. She actually was a CEO for several years in New York Public Radio. So, as a radio person yourself, I know you would appreciate that. And so she is now bringing this deep experience working with media, with journalism, and with fundraising to Bennington College, and this experimental approach. And then on top of that, I also know that the faculty are working out, um, you know, um, what does it mean to do shared governance as a faculty there? They're sort of continuing to develop that. So these are some sort of, I think, some among others, key priority items that I'll be involved in and that are happening across the campus there.
Well, I think that's. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, and just in reflection of your time at TCNJ moving forward?
TCNJ has been a phenomenally welcoming community. From my first time, I remember when I came here for an interview, I came here it was just before the Christmas holiday season. And I was staying in an apartment on the edge of campus just across from the ICOP plaza. And I sort of walked out because I wanted to see what student life was like. And on this evening, students were sitting outside of ICOP in the cold and they were doing something with a Santa Claus thing. I'm not quite sure what they were doing. You probably know what the tradition is. It's something with Santa. I can't remember if they were dressed up as, or there was a Santa Claus and the students were doing something with Santa Claus and gifts, whatever it was. It was very festive. It was very exciting. All the students were interacting with each other. And the moment I saw that, I said, like, yep, this is it. This is the place I want to be. Um, and my experience at TCNJ has been it's an incredibly warm and welcoming community. I have found students, faculty, staff to be passionate about the place, very dedicated to it. It sounds like a cliche, and yet I meet alums who 20, 15 years having graduated from either what was then Trenton State or the College of New Jersey. Deeply committed to the place, fond memories, really, really, really excited to know what's going on campus, happy to meet fellow alums. And I, in my role as dean, I didn't have to try to persuade people very hard to be involved with the school. They were just waiting to be asked. So there's a lot of love here for the community. And that spills, and there's a lot of belief in what people are doing. And that spills over into this really warm and welcoming community. Is it a perfect community? Of course not. Are there issues here? Absolutely, that we need to think about. How do we include everyone? How do we knit everyone together in a way that everyone feels they find their place and they find welcome? Is an ongoing conversation across many colleges and universities, not certainly unique to TCNJ, but I think that the the approach the faculty has here to shared governance and the approach across the college overall that is about reflection, everyone having a voice, everyone contributing to the conversation, finding decisions by some form of consensus. I think that marks a really interesting, intriguing, and special culture that I think TCNJ would do well to continue to cultivate and to keep growing. And I think the students who bring a lot of that energy and that passion and that creativity, um, every time I've met, so one of my regrets is that I wasn't able to teach because there just wasn't time. But every time I've met students, they've sounded like much older than they actually are, much more mature than they actually are, much more wise or much more reflective. I was always impressed by that. I very rarely did I have a conversation with students where I didn't come away impressed. That again is, it sounds like the thing you would say, but it really was true for me. And I've worked at some pretty good schools, and I really think TCNJ students, not only are they clearly among the best in the country, you don't have to ask people here about, you just have to see what they do when they graduate, right? The graduates are working at the best and most exclusive and most competitive companies across the country. So clearly we have students who come here who very smart, do very well, but also embrace what's here and go out and do quite well. So I think because of that, I think it's been a very special place and a very special experience for that reason for me. So that will always be part of me. I will always take that with me.
Well, Dean Hall, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great being able to talk to you.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to have this reflection, and I really appreciate your just even seeking out my thoughts. So thank you.